I've heard that, in Tijuana, people are saying we don't want you here, and people are saying go back home. But there, as much as you hear that, there's way more support for them, for the Caravanistas. Like in Mexico, people in Chiapas, one of the poorest districts, took them in their homes, gave them food, clothes, and they said these are workers. They want a decent job and they want a safe life. And in the countries that they come from, colonial countries like Honduras, Guatemala, Central American countries, it's impoverished due to colonialism. The United States has backed dictatorships in their countries, and they live in poverty and all the things that go along with poverty, crime, and they're escaping. They just want asylum from that. That you can support the Caravanistas. You can give money, you can go to the border and protest to counteract the troops that are there that Trump sent, and just educate other people as to why they're here. They're not bad people like Trump says. They're not criminals. They're people with families, children, older people that are escaping a bad life. So.
That we're not doing
we can give money. There's a lot of sites online, GoFundMe's. There's a leaflet here that you can go to Immigrant Migrants Alliance Solidarity with the Migrant Caravan on GoFundMe to give money to them. And we can pay attention to the fact that of where this is coming from. It's a right-wing attack on, it's from colonialism, like I said, and there's a lot of propaganda out now about these people being bad people, which they're just not there. They have no other choices but to leave their countries. They're not safe in their countries, and they can't make a living. So just to understand that and support them and tell your neighbors and counteract the propaganda that's coming out from the Trump administration.
today's gathering.
We want to walk around and educate people about the cause of this, and Trump has ordered 15,000. He ordered 15,000 troops to go there to shoot if they had to. If people were throwing rocks, they would just shoot. And it's down to 6,000 troops now. But after the elections, it was sort of a campaign strategy, a tough guy strategy that was going to. And the difference between our response to the Caravanistas and the rest of the world's response, and this isn't just this caravan from Central America. There's immigrants all over the world that are escaping climate change, which is also caused by burning fossil fuels and capitalism, imperialism. Just a lot of people escaping dictatorships, not just in the United States, but other countries that are in there, extracting all the wealth and paying people pennies for labor.
Terrific. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll let you get on with it.
Okay, thanks. Introduce myself. Lynn Neely, Lyn, last name Neely, Neely.
What group you're with as well?
I'm in FIRE, fight for immigrants and refugees everywhere.
My name's Misha Lidvok, M-I-S-H-A, last name L-I-T-V-A-K. I'm a member of Workers World Fire. Yeah.
And just somebody talk to me about what's going on here today.
We are answering a call from the Caravanistas and the Mexican support committee to have national demonstrations or rallies in support of the Caravanistas, to educate people, raise funds, get people to go to the border and demonstrate against the troops that Trump has sent there and to welcome the refugees into this country. So that's what we're here for.
Why are sending troops to the border? Why is that a bad idea?
Well, in comparison to other countries, in Chiapas, Mexico, when the Caravanistas went through Mexico, people opened their doors, gave them food, water, clothes, and they said these people are families. These people have no other choices in the countries that they come from because they come from colonial countries where imperialism has extracted all the wealth and there's a lot of repression. So these people just want a decent job and safety, time and safety. Whereas Trump, who is behind the cause, represents our imperialist country, which is the cause of them leaving the countries in the first place. He paid $2 million to get 1,500 troops there when he was running for election to be the tough guy, and says these are bad people, some tough hombres that. Criminals, and he's painting a picture of that's incorrect, to support his political agenda, which is imperialism in other countries.
Is there anything that you'd like to add?
Lynn covered it well. I will say, though, that I can elaborate a little bit more on the violence that's been enacted by the U.S. government that caused a lot of these migrants to have to come here. So, since the 40s and 50s, the United States has been at least economically intervening in countries like Honduras, all over Central America. In, I believe it was 1954. Now I have to look at my sheet. I'm going off
no
here.
It is
1954. Yeah, there was a general strike in Honduras against the occupying fruit companies. It was United Fruit, which is today known as Chiquita Foods International. And I'd say. In 2009, there was an election in Honduras. They elected a guy who raised the minimum wage by 80%, cut poverty by 10%, and in a very short order, he was removed in a coup from a general who was supported and educated by the United States military. And since then, there have been mass killings of labor organizers, LGBTQ and women's advocates, of indigenous activists, of peasant organizers, and this is all on the U.S.'s dime and at our behest.
Well, we're here to educate people, to get people to, if they want to donate funds and to welcome the refugees. There's a lot of people going down there and a lot of ways to get down there. They can contact any of our groups to find out how to get to the border to make a statement, that the people of this country are welcoming them.
I'd say to note our message today is that they're workers, we're workers, and there's no borders in the worker struggle.
That's good. Yeah.
That's what I had.
Sure.
So I think it's important to look at which countries people are fleeing from. It's primarily Honduras, Guatemala, and not Nicaragua, for example, because Nicaragua has a progressive anti-imperialist government, which has a police force which is run by the communities. They have massive trade unions which are supported by the government. They have constantly increasing minimum wage and land reform programs. And by contrast, Honduras has a fascist coup installed by the United States with totally ridiculous elections.
Go ahead.
Because there are union organizers currently being held illegally who have been kept prisoner in Honduras for years now. I used to have the names, I'm sorry, I know this, I use their names. But not only do they imprison journalists, which we expect from an oppressive regime, but they have also imprisoned, like you were saying, the initial scourge on union leaders. They've imprisoned union leaders and they haven't even bothered to file charges in some cases. They just detain them and keep them detained, and people have protested
not just this, but the Palestinians, immigrants from a lot of countries are fleeing because of economic repressions, because not just the United States imperialism, but other the European countries that are in there extracting wealth. So that's why FIRE is talking about fight for immigrant rights everywhere around the world. So it's a phenomenon, and Trump is a really good example of the right wing. Like he was saying, he tore families apart. Put small tiny kids in concentration camps tore them away from their mothers. The ICE facilities are putting immigrants in prisons. So we're saying end that, grant asylum, which he's trying to undo all the gains that this country's made to grant asylum for TRS, people from TRS. So.
Is there anything? Ginger's going crazy. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Don't worry about Ginger.
But is there anything that any of you would like to have that we haven't covered today? Misha?
I think we about got it, yeah.
Portland has been on the forefront of protesting, like when the ICE facilities. We were the first to occupy the ICE facility and the longest around the country. So, we're appealing to people in Portland, progressive people in Portland, to take a stand. And if nothing else has made you political, this is we don't want to, we want to make a progressive stand on this issue.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right.
Misha's gonna.
Doing my speech now, yes. Good afternoon. My name is Misha Litvak. I'm a member of Workers' World Party, FIRE, and I'm a steward for AFSCME. Thousands of migrant workers and their families from Honduras have marched through Guatemala into Mexico, a river of people flooding the roads. They are bound for what they hope could be a better life in the United States. President Trump has deployed so far 5,900 active duty troops and has closed the U.S.-Mexico border against the migrants. Closing a border is usually the last action a nation takes before declaring war. Can I say it how I feel it? The United States has already declared war on migrants. It began under the previous administration and is now being implemented even more cruelly and outrageously under Trump. For over a century, U.S. capitalists have been waging brutal, devastating economic war on Honduras and other Central American countries in order to extract billions of dollars of profit from their land and their labor. The Honduran migrants are simply fleeing the blows of poverty, violence, and death that U.S. aggression has dealt their country. At the beginning of the 20th century, U.S. corporations like United Fruit stole thousands of acres of indigenous lands in Central America and exploited the labor of indigenous peoples. That economic occupation left a deadly legacy of poverty, illnesses from exposure to the agricultural chemicals, tuberculosis, respiratory crises, infertility, cancer, and death. But Honduras workers resisted, as 40,000 did in the general strike of 1954. There was always the threat of U.S. intervention. The U.S. Secretary of State at the time was John Foster Dulles, whose law firm represented United Fruit Company. His brother Alan Dulles was the director of the CIA and a United Fruit board member. The current destabilization of Honduras came in 2009 again at the hands of the U.S. The Honduran president, Manuel Zelaya, introduced economic reforms that increased the minimum wage by 80% and reduced poverty by 10%. He was swiftly deposed in a violent coup. Where did the coup come from? Honduran General Romeo Vasquez Velasquez, a graduate from the notorious School of the Americas, the U.S. Army training program better known as the School of the Assassins. A horrific wave of assassinations and murders followed the 2009 coup. The U.S. corporate media referred to this as a period of violence, without explaining that the violence came from the reactionary government put in place by U.S. imperialism and its collaborators. Since then, the reactionary government of Honduras and its allies in the U.S. have overseen the slaughter of indigenous activists, peasant leaders, journalists, trade unionists, environmentalists, judges, LGBTQ and women's advocates, human rights activists, and others, all killed by right-wing death squads for the crime of demanding basic human rights like a living wage. U.S. officials were instrumental in guaranteeing power to the murderous junta and preventing Zelaya, the lawfully elected president, from returning to office. Honduran workers are continuing their fight for their country. In May 2017, over 2,000 courageous workers took over 10 farms belonging to Taylor Railroad Company, a subsidiary of United Fruit, known today as Chiquita Brands International. And their struggle continues as they wait at the southern border of the United States that has taken so much from them. They have come to demand a future that they can survive in. As workers in the U.S., it is our responsibility to fight for our utmost to stop the deadly interventions carried out by the corporate establishment that runs this country and support the Honduran people's fight for self-determination. We must stand in solidarity because it is the right thing to do.
Yes.
But in addition, the callous impoverishment of workers in other countries eventually means low wages here too.
Yes.
Imperialism respects no borders in its interventions all over the globe. Profits stolen from workers and farmers around the world have lined the pockets of billionaires here, who then try to pit us against working people from other companies. But we have a common enemy with the workers of Honduras: U.S. imperialism.
Yay!
No borders in the workers' struggle.
No borders in the workers' struggle.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's a small grouping because for every person that's here, there's 5 people that had to go to work today. But we represent a larger grouping and many more that are in support of the Caravanistas. And despite what you hear on the media, there's a lot of people that support them. And so we're here to, is there anyone else that wants to talk? There's 4 organizations that we're representing that did this fight for immigrants and refugees everywhere. PSL, which stands for
Party for Socialism.
Party for Socialism Liberation, and ILPS, an International League of
People's Struggles.
We also have representatives from the Interfaith Movement for Migration Justice.
Yeah, interfaith.
Merge.
Yes.
And in fact, this Thursday, we're having our last Thursday of every month, from 10 to 11, quiet, meditative prayer walk around the ice building.
Oh, good.
We've been doing that for about a year and a half.
Great.
And if I may, I'm also involved with the sanctuarycaravan.org, which is a group that is organized in New York City and is attempting to call for people to march to the border. And I would just offer, I'm trying to get some traction for an idea other than just a lot of people massing at the border in opposition to what is happening there. It's already a humanitarian crisis at the border, and so I just see it as sort of exasperating an already bad situation. But if we were to take a page out of some of our other activist book and say, if we could get a pledge for so much per mile for those of us who are willing to walk from here to Salem,
Oh, that's
and
great.
from other cities all across the country, hand over a torch, raise some money so that these people at the border will have health care, so that they will have a secure environment in which to sleep, and medical care, I think would be some of the best things that we could do with our good intentions. And we could do it at a pledge per mile for as many people as we could
That's
possibly
fantastic.
mobilize.
How do they get a hold of you?
Well, I'm really here as an individual with an idea that I'm trying to get traction for as an outcropping of the sanctuarycaravan.org.
Okay.
But I hope that some of the groups here I can come together with, and we can build some solidarity around raising some money for these migrants who are being just left in an abusive situation at the border. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to talk?
Decades ago, I opened my home to people who were fleeing violence perpetrated by the U.S. public policy and corporate policy in Latin America. I did not speak Portuguese, Spanish, or indigenous languages, but I had room and I had courage and I had compassion. So we made do and got lots of beds and materials and stuff for people. I recommend folks try that, do that, because it's a way to strengthen and increase, improve your own personal and spiritual growth and sense of community. And encountering a time of of learned helplessness or despair and depression. Simply acting with integrity to your values to help someone else is the best antidote to depression. And I also see that when we can connect with other people's experiences, we can heal some of our own experiences and bring forth answers and learn from them. In spring 1982, I was living with some folks whose families had ruled Europe and the European control ruled for over 850 years, and they disabused me of my naivete about American government and policy. And said you have to read The Ugly American. They're telling me about some of the horrible things that we've been doing in Latin America. And then when I was in May 1982, I was working for someone who was in turn working for NATO. I asked him what he do, and he says he's mapping all the oil and methane reserves to oil and gas pipe. Like, and so all the stuff we talk about, supposedly we're doing good things, they're learning the skills and the training and the attitude. Our U.S. Forest Service planes supposed to be putting out fires here are being used to transport torture guns and drugs and torture victims. So we can, even if you lack any empathy or compassion or sense of oneness with people south of the border, just for your own selfishness, as far as best value for your tax dollar or your own safety or not having those weapons and those soldiers, those attitudes coming and using the same brutality on you here, even for only selfishness, if you don't care about your soul, is to really fight this with every way we can.
No to the troops, stop the ban, support the immigrant caravan. No to the troops, stop the ban, support the immigrant caravan. No to the troops, stop the ban. No to the, support the immigrant caravan. I have a letter here from American Friends Service Committee that Pedro couldn't be here, but he wanted me to read this letter in support. So the American Friends Service Committee was founded in 1917. It's a Quaker organization that promotes lasting peace with justice as a practical expression of faith in action. AFSC sent a delegation to Mexico City 2 weeks ago to meet with the Exodus Caravan. They signed agreements with the Jesuit Migrant Service and the Casa de los Amigos, as well as the committee to work with various NGO partners in Mexico. AFSC San Diego office and its Tijuana counterpart have worked for many years to ensure human rights protection of immigrants entering the U.S. AFSC is mobilizing its extensive network of partners, including their faith leaders, to organize actions at the border and across the country in the coming weeks. We are calling on the U.S. government to respect the human right to migrate and seek asylum, to stop detaining and deporting immigrants, to stop efforts to implement indefinite detention, and to meet migrants with welcome and support, not troops and walls. We're gearing up for a December 10th through 18th week of action. Love knows no borders, a moral call for migrant justice to show solidarity with all the workers who seek refuge. Pedro Sosa, AFSC Immigrant Rights Director in Oregon and Washington, has issued an invitation to organize a delegation to go to San Diego to join the Week of Action and volunteer with local groups on both sides of the border. If you're interested, contact Pedro at psosa@afsc.org or talk to me at the end of this rally. There will be an ongoing need for volunteers in the coming months, not just this week. Join AFSC and its partners in saying no to the Trump administration militarization of the border and resist and restricting asylum requests from the Exodus Caravan.
Thank you.
La lucha obrera. La lucha